Hello, Sertaç.
Hi, Zenon.
How are you?
I'm okay. Nice to meet you in person.
In person, yeah, likewise. And how are things with you? This period of your life.
I'm okay. Trying to wrap up the semester, and I have some master students that I'm supervising, and we are trying to finish them, and also some research that I am trying to get published, get printed even, I would say. I'm working on corruption perceptions and corruption experience of corruption in the north. Two parallel projects actually. We are trying to wrap them up and launch them. One of them next week, hopefully. The other one in September. So quite busy.
Yeah, very busy, like a proper academic.
How about
publish
you?
or perish. We usually perish, but
Yeah.
and publish as well.
Publish and perish.
Publish and perish. Yes. But yeah, it's these are very interesting stuff and quite innovative, if I may say. I've followed some of your research in the past, especially when it comes to the Turkish Cypriot community. What you do is there is not much out there, so you're in that sense you're sort of closing, filling a gap.
Thank you. That was our intention actually, because we are using the Transparency International's methodology. As you know, they are doing it's a Berlin-based anti-corruption NGO, and they publish on an annual basis Corruption Perceptions Index, where they cover over 180 countries and territories. North is not one of them. So that's how we started actually. That we need something to have data and also to raise public awareness.
Yes. Do you think the lack of data sort of hinders the, let's say, the practices, the everyday practices, political practices?
I would say so. If you don't know about it, if you cannot somehow quantify it, you know that it's a problem.
Yes.
We know that it's a problem because we are living in this society and everyone is encountering that and reading on the newspapers, etc. But we don't know the extent of it.
Yeah.
So what is good about Transparency International, using this methodology, is you can compare yourself with other countries as well.
Right. Because there's already available data for other places.
Exactly, exactly. So we compare it with the South, we compare with Turkey, Greece, these are countries in our region, and also Malta, small country, small island, and we have some, I think at least political, culture-wise, we have some similarities.
Okay.
It's interesting.
I know we jumped right into it, but could you share like some provisional results from this comparison? Because it's very interesting.
Well, in the corruption barometer, which came out last year, 2021, Republic of Cyprus was not doing very well because of the recent scandals. So, but even compared to this low point of the South, North is in a worse situation. Of course, we had our own scandals, particularly during the pandemic period, one after another.
I remember some of them. Yeah.
And of course, these affect the results. We held a similar research in 2019, and then our fieldwork was in 2021. In 2 years' time, you can see the deterioration. Okay? So many people, well, not many people, almost 90% of the Turkish Cypriots think that corruption is a big or very big problem, for instance.
Yes.
That's a huge number. So it's, I would say, in European Union standards, where we are is quite quite bad. But there are also some pleasant surprises. Like, if my memory is serving me well, 83% of Turkish Cypriots think that corruption cannot be justified, even if this means delivering, results. So that we have this, standard line. You ask people whether they agreed with it or not.
The end doesn't justify the means.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, say corruption can be tolerated if it leads to,
right, to a job or whatever.
No, it's not that specific.
It's not that specific. Okay.
It's a
broader question.
I don't know what would happen with that. It was a broad one, like if it leads. If it delivers at the end.
Okay.
And 83% say no, this is not acceptable. The level in the EU, the average is lower, 73, 75%.
Okay.
So it's good to see that people have this reaction as well. I mean, and it's a good sign. I mean, it's not like it's very bad, and we are not. We are doomed. We are not. We are not there yet.
Yeah. But there is a disconnect, and I see that in the Republic of Cyprus as well. I mean, between what the people think and what the people want, and how the political level operates, and how the institutions sort of function. And sometimes this culture of corruption and various other issues is so institutionalized that no matter what we believe or what we want, and maybe our perceptions and our attitudes are very good and positive, I find that it's very difficult to affect the institutional and the political level, and I think that's a contemporary, maybe not that contemporary, but a contemporary problem of democracy as well.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, it's part of this debate about the rise of populism.
Yes.
This growing disconnect. Interestingly, we have a question on that as well. The statement is something like this: when making decisions, the government does not take into account of the views of the people like me, agree or disagree. Or sorry, it was other way around. It was like, when making decisions, the government takes into account the views of people like me.
Right.
Agree, 7%.
Well, that says it all, right?
Well, I think it's a manifestation.
Yeah,
of
it's a huge indication that people are dissatisfied with leadership, right? And I think this is the same here, but then you have the other phenomenon, and you see it in our pre-election campaign, for example, for the 2023 presidential elections, and you see that the three forerunners, or at least let's say the two, come from the same political party, which is the same party that has been ruling for the past almost 8 years. So, 10 years. So, and then you see people just being loyal to that. I mean, yes, the candidates are more than one, but still, the greatest percentage of people, still based on public opinion polls, you see them being fixated on people from the same sort of establishment, and that's problematic, because it's the same people who sort of criticize the establishment, and then they go and vote for it again.
Another similarity. We are going through an energy crisis in the north. In the last couple of days, we had these blackouts, this rolling power cuts, which went up to 4 or 5 hours a day.
Wow.
And this was the case just before the election as well. We had general elections at the beginning of the year, and we had this power cuts in this period as well. And people were mad. but they basically voted for the party in power, for the parties in power, and returned them to power again. And now they have the same result, power cuts, and they're mad. and then in the social media, we have all these comments. They say, I mean, particularly those from the opposition, they say, see, I mean, you voted for them, that's what they delivered. And I'm afraid if we have another election next week, we are going to vote for them again. So I think we have a problem there.
That's a huge issue to research. But we also see a stalemate, Sertaç, in the efforts to resolve the Cyprus problem, and I'm sure that it's taking a toll, politically, not only politically, in many other ways, in both communities, in a sense, and many people in the Republic of Cyprus say that issues like corruption, like economic development and so on are hindered by the lack of progress, at least, you know, because the solution has been so evasive for so many years. But there hasn't been any progress, and so far, at least the existence of a dialogue has functioned as a mechanism to de-escalate, to keep things somehow stable, and so on. But in the absence of that, in this entire sort of deadlock, we've seen things, I think, exacerbate in all aspects of society and politics. How do you see that, at least from a Turkish Cypriot
I fully agree with you. And the latest round of negotiations collapsed in 2017.
Right.
And this was 5 years ago. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's really sad to see, you know, these opportunities being missed, because it takes. Remember the Annan plan. We can see it as another missed opportunity. So from the Annan plan in 2004 till Crown Montana in 2017, we had to wait for 13 years.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid time is not our friend. Because there is this generational change, and things are getting worse, I would say. And people are, although the leaderships, they acknowledged, and then they even put their signatures under this in 2012, I think, this declaration between Anastasiadis and 2014. Anastasiadis and Eroglu, they said the current situation is not sustainable. Yeah? But we are taking, I mean, most people are taking this for granted. And it's a dangerous thing, I would say.
I'll tell you what the perception in the Greek Cypriot community is that despite all these problems, the status quo is a safer choice, you know. So it's not about the optimal solution, obviously, but it's always a safer choice before the risk of any solution, and that's why they usually opt to say, you know, if the content of the solution does not, and I'm sure this is to some extent true in the Turkish Cypriot community, if the content of the solution does not satisfy my minimum security needs, security broadly speaking, then there is no reason for me to agree to a new status quo, which might as well, you know, lead us back to conflict and new deadlocks and all that. But I have the suspicion that this works in a slightly different way in the Turkish Cypriot community, in the sense that perhaps the cost cost benefit analysis is somehow different. And from my discussion with other Turkish Cypriots, I get the feeling that there is this pressure, economic pressure and political pressure, and even cultural pressure in terms of how things are developing, and also some certain tendencies of fleeting Cyprus altogether. I don't know if this is an accurate picture.
I would say so. That's what I sense as well. Of course, the South, or the Republic of Cyprus, in many respects, operates normally like a normal state.
Yeah.
It's part of the international community. It's part of the EU. Mr. Anastasiadis was in the NATO summit last week in Madrid, and you are conducting your business, and whereas Turkish Cypriots are under this isolation, okay? And so we don't enjoy all these things of being part of the international community. And I think in my generation also there is this problem, or let's say until 2003 there was no link between the two sides, so it was not possible to see the other side as well.
Yeah.
In a way, it was more bearable.
Yeah, okay.
Now, after 2003 and also 2004, the accession of the Republic to the EU gave Turkish Cypriots also the opportunity to enjoy these rights as individuals. At least some of the Turkish Cypriots, citizens of the EU. And we had this relatively liberal period from 2002, 3 till, I would say, 2020, the latest presidential election in the north. But things have changed in that respect as well. And this brings us back to what you have said earlier about when you have the negotiations, when you have the process going on, it lifts the moods because it de-escalates, as you put it, and it stabilizes the situation. There is hope. I mean, you see that they're discussing it, etc. And after 2017, the failure in Crans-Montana, that is also gone. So it breeds this hopelessness because there is no prospect. And also, Turkish economy, we are dependent on the on the Turkish economy in many respects. I'm not saying that I think we can stand on our feet. So if we have a solution, there are times when actually I'm taking a detour, but let me just mention that this can be interesting for Greek Cypriot audience to know. In 2019, just before the pandemic, Turkish Cypriot economy ran a current account surplus.
Okay.
So because of the tourism and higher education sectors, they are bringing in money. We managed to cover our imports with that, and on top we had this surplus. The same applied to the budget. So it's not like it's a completely a complete basket case. I mean, it's not a So it has potential. That's something that I would like to underline.
Yeah.
Even under isolation, there is potential there. But of course, the pandemic, then depreciation of the Turkish lira. Now we have the. Recently, I read that they compare the rise in the oil prices to the oil crisis in the 1970s. It's a huge thing actually, and we have this impending food crisis, etc. So things are not going well overall. And we feel, and as I said, I mean, Turkish economy is not doing well either. So now we had the latest figures, inflation figures yesterday. Inflation for the last 12 months is over 100%.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult period for Turkish Cypriots, and I hear, of course, this is anecdotal, that, as you said, I mean, people are fleeing. I mean, because they don't see any future on the island. Economically, there is this. It's been a while, actually. It's been a while that Turkish Cypriot community is, at least in GDP per capita terms, getting poorer.
Yeah.
And of course, all these are taking their toll on the.
They are. I'm sure they are. But I do see some resistance as well. Is it true? I mean, I've seen protests in the Turkish Cypriot community. I mean, it's not like the Turkish Cypriots are okay with this, right?
Well, you're right. There are some protests, but these protests are not as strong as they used to be.
Yes.
Because the most important protests, let's say, in the Turkish Cypriot history, I would say, were organized in 2002, 2003 period.
That's right.
That's the period.
And they had a very good impact back then in terms of the developments.
Exactly. That was the Annan Plan period. And for the first time at that time, Turkish Cypriots had an alternative to the status quo.
That's right.
A concrete alternative. It's not like, one day we are going to reunify. No, there was a plan there, and the prospect of joining the EU.
Yeah.
I mean, within months. So this triggered, these social movements, these protests. Nowadays, it's more difficult to mobilize people. I mean, I sense this. I mean, I see this frustration in the opposition parties and trade unions, civil society. They try to organize these protests, these marches, but they're not as successful in mobilizing people as they used to be. And this comes back to the Cyprus problem, because there is no concrete alternative to the status quo. So people, as you said about the Greek Cypriot society, if you're not sure about the alternative, the viability of whether it is better or not, then you stick with the status quo.
With what you know,
So I think people are reacting in a similar way on both sides of the divide.
Yes, that's true. I'm just thinking that these are very, sort of interesting developments, and I know. I mean, I've seen the new leadership in the north, being quite different. And I mean, you mentioned it, that things have changed over the past couple of years, let's say, and this has reflections on the dynamics of the negotiation and the type of the solution that is being sought.
Exactly.
And obviously, this has created, it's like an action and reaction, has created reactions on the Greek Cypriot side, and I'm wondering, because my gut feeling is that this new approach Tatar has adopted along with Ankara is not necessarily the view of Turkish Cypriots in terms of two states. But again, I also have another gut feeling that maybe it's getting traction, this idea, because of the lack of alternatives, maybe.
Exactly. We had this research in 2018, early 2018. It was after the Crown Montana, but Akıncı was still there, and the federation discourse was still there.
Yeah.
And we asked people separately. What would you say to a solution? I mean, the standard BBF solution, and we gave them three basic options. Like, I fully endorse. I consider this as a compromise solution, and I'm fully against this.
Yeah.
Okay? And options were federation, continuation of the status quo, two-state solution.
Yeah.
I mean, these even annexation
Right. Yes.
by Turkey. Of course, you see the tendency that people are more favorable. I mean, about federation by communal, bizonal, bi-communal federation based on equality. They're also fine with, if it's going to happen, two-state solution. We also gave the option. We asked what they thought about also a unitary solution.
Yes,
in a
that's
way,
right.
returning back
Obviously,
to the Republic of Cyprus. So these are very different options, actually.
Yes.
But what you see is overall, I don't remember the exact figures, but overall, our take was people are fed up. So they're ready to compromise with anything. So anything is better than the status quo for the Turkish Cypriots. And that shows us how hurting the current situation is. So people want to have an end to this state of being in limbo.
Right.
Because there are, in our daily lives, there are problems. Like, I mean, you can say that it's trivial, but they're not. I mean, you're ordering something from internet. Okay, we have the problem with the postal services,
Yes.
etc. That's one thing, but you cannot even enter your country.
Yeah.
There, it's really difficult to open a bank account, etc. I mean, ordering something. These are all
everyday life is completely
huge challenges.
Yeah.
So people want to have
some sort of normality. Maybe.
Exactly. So in a way, it's an opportunity because people are ready to be convinced. But at the same time, it's a threat in the sense that they are so frustrated that any solution which will bring an end to the uncertainty will be accepted.
Well, things work in the exact opposite way in the Republic of Cyprus, because what makes your situation worse makes our community become more afraid, be more afraid of a change, because you have several factors. You have, for example, the concern that how are we going to balance out this economic situation? If we live in a United States, for example, who's going to lift this economic burden? It's a common concern. Or if Turkish Cypriots are so marginalized within their own community and their agencies losing sort of power, with whom are we going to collaborate in the future? Also, if Turkey's presence in the north is so embedded, how are we undoing that? And as the situation within the Turkish community is getting worse, but also the larger geopolitical framework, if you look at it, and especially I mentioned earlier, about the research I did on perceptions in the Greek Cypriot community, and you see that the perceptions on Turkey and the future of the Cyprus problem are getting much worse after 2016, when you had the failed quant attempt in Turkey, and when you had all this change in foreign policy with all these interventions abroad, and they're like, who are we going to, have a deal with Erdogan? No, he's an autocrat. What stops him from invading the new federal state if we agree on it at some point? There is this huge concern. Some of it is obviously legitimate, and some of it is an exaggeration that stems from historical bitterness and historical fears which exist in both communities. And that's why it's so difficult to bridge the perceptions and the realities of the two communities.
You're right. You mentioned this economic concerns. I think that they played an important role back in 2004 as well, during the Annan plan, and that's why actually I mentioned that it looks bad from outside, but it's not that bad.
Right.
So there is potential, and in that respect, we have to think in a more dynamic fashion. Okay? So if there will be a solution, many obstacles in front of the Turkish Cypriot businesses will be lifted, and they will use their real potential. So, and also we have a huge advantage. Actually, we are going to be part of the EU.
Right.
You are part of the EU already, and the new reunified Republic will be part of the EU as well.
Yeah.
Which means we'll be able to benefit from structural funds and regional funds of the EU. And my take is it's not going to take a very long time. I'm not saying that we are going to have, we are going to catch up with the Greek Cypriots very soon. Economically, but I think that the gap will narrow in a relatively short time, and there won't be a need for Greek Cypriots to fund the Turkish Cypriots. So I think that's something that we can somehow overcome.
Right.
Other perception is about the situation in Turkey. Well, maybe things will start changing. Next year there are elections. 2023 will be a year full of elections. And I'm wondering, what do you think about you already mentioned what's going on in Cyprus, but I'm wondering what you think about the elections in Greece and Turkey.
Actually, in Greece we might have them this year. It's likely that they will take place in autumn sometime. I think it's the snap elections in Greece is a way for Mitsotakis to secure his re-election, and it's very likely that he will. Coming out right after the summer period when you have this boost in the economy because of tourism and so on. And if he manages to keep things relatively stable with Turkey without any problems, this might also help him, although a crisis sometimes helps as well.
Well, I mean, I think there's a strong nationalist faction within New Democracy. There is
a conservative. Actually, there is a sort of a clash within New Democracy right now. There is, the conservatives who take a harder line on things, and there is let's call them the progressives, which are more for dialogue and engagement and all that. So I think what's going on right now is a hybrid approach, which seeks dialogue but also tries to capitalize this international reaction to Turkey's foreign policy and say, now you're getting what we've been saying for so many years, so do something about it. So this is what's going on. And then you have Erdogan on the other side saying, I don't know who Mitsotakis is. I don't want to talk to him. So, so this, well, on the one hand, it doesn't help the dialogue. On the other hand, it helps Mitsotakis in the sense that, there is a problem. Erdogan is a problem. He doesn't even want to talk to me. I'm open to discuss. So I think this will probably work out for Mitsotakis' government in the end. I'm not sure.
There's one detail. Sorry to interrupt you. It seems, although they have this exchange of words, let's say, at the highest level, from prime minister to the president, at the same time, ministers of defense are talking to each other.
Yes. Yes.
So that's a reassuring thing, and I'm wondering.
It is, yes. I mean, ever since the 1996 crisis between the two, there has been a good line of communication, and this line of communication has functioned well in the sense that it has prevented things from getting out of hand at various points in history. This link is not working as well right now, but it's still working, and obviously with the involvement of NATO as well, because this is a very critical time for NATO because of the war in Ukraine, and they would like, if they can, to keep things stable in this part of the world. While at the same time Russia is trying to lure Turkey, further away from NATO and create problems within NATO. So you have all these dynamics going on, and you have also Erdogan. If you probably know more about what's going on in Turkish media, but it's a crazy house. I mean, if you look at what they're saying and how they put out various analysts saying, these islands are ours, and if you draw this line right here, from here on, it's ours, and then it's like children's, talk, but they're serious, and it's everywhere, in every newspaper, and there's this sentiment that is being pushed because the Turkish people overall, if you look at public opinion polls, they don't consider Greece as the highest threat.
Exactly.
But this is changing, This is changing because of the official narrative and how they're playing all the time that Greece and the US are collaborating because they want to invade us. And this is like a crazy talk. I mean, and then we need to take all these islands to defend ourselves. And this is dangerous because we're at a place right now where Erdogan is finding it very difficult to secure his re-election.
Exactly. That's the domestic.
That is, yes. That's
the more problems you have in domestic politics and economy, the more likely that you are going to pick a fight.
Yes, that you will have a crisis because nothing else can save you. Only rally around the flag, nationalism, and let's save the nation or whatever. But the important thing to understand here is that this new Turkey, of 2023, is like Erdogan's child dream. It's his whole life. So he has to be re-elected in 2023. This is the most important election of his lifetime. Yeah. Which means that he will go to great lengths to secure that he will get re-elected. This can mean crisis domestically, can mean crisis abroad. It can mean rigging the election. It can mean anything. Putting the HDP party out, banning the party and anyone else for that matter who disagrees. So you have this situation which, in my view, is very crisis prone for the next year until June 2023, and you also have in 2023 you have the elections in the Republic of Cyprus. Right now, there isn't much. The campaign started very early, so even earlier this year, which was very unusual. We're already 8 months away from the election, and we know who the 3 forerunners are. But there's not even an essential debate on the public dialogue on the elections is more about who has more appeal. It's more of a aesthetic thing, a communication thing. It's about talking about the past or arguing who was more to blame about Grand Montana, for example, in 2017. No, you were in the room, I was not in the room, you took the whatever. As if they were not part of the same government or whatever. Anyway, and there's the actual political programs are not out yet. So people are giving their opinions in public opinion polls, and you have these results that are not based on any political views.
Is it revolving around the Cyprus issue so far? Because in our presidential elections, it should be all about the Cyprus problem.
But it's not.
Because the mandate is, president
Yes, that's
in
right.
the north.
The negotiator,
It's a parliamentary system.
Right.
So it doesn't really have much political power beyond being the community leader and negotiating.
Yeah. But it's usually not, right? Because all these other things of corruption come into play.
Exactly.
And the future of the community and all that.
It becomes like that when there is no hope.
Yes,
Particularly.
That's correct. Yes.
But essentially, it's about the Cyprus problem. But in your case, it's quite different because it's a presidential system.
Yes.
And the president has to
do everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not about just the Cyprus problem. It's just the fact that you have this very peculiar case where you have the foreign minister who dealt with aspects of the Cyprus problem, and who before that he was a government spokesperson. And then you have the president of the party who has been in government for 10 years. And then you have the negotiator who was there in the last round of negotiations. So it's inevitable that you will have a discussion about what happened in 2017, who's to blame and who shares more of the blame, and how are they differentiating themselves right now from then, or how they're justifying themselves.
Could you elaborate on that? Because I'm really wondering what's the discussion in the south. Because when you look at it from the north, I think majority blame Anastasiadis for
yes. It's a Turkish sort of narrative of the
coming, but also more international. I mean, so I'm wondering what's this, what these details. I mean, how they position themselves.
Well, there's not much details because they cannot really share details. So it's more about so
it's a veiled.
It's more about posturing. It's like so. For example, you have Mavroyiannis, who's the independent candidate supported by Agel, saying, I fought more than anyone in the negotiations to get what we should have gotten. But then he says, obviously Turkey is to blame, but we should have maybe pushed more and try more in the negotiations instead of leaving. This is what Mavroyiannis says. And he says that Christodoulis didn't actually fight for it, because who's another independent candidate coming from DC, supported by Rico. It's a mess. And Christodoulis wasn't a foreign minister at the time. He became a foreign minister in 2018. So at Grand Montanaki, he was only a spokesperson, so he really didn't have a say. So the argument there is that Mavroyiannis is the one who defended the process, the Greek Cypriot stance. Christodoulis didn't really do that. He was more on Anastasiadis' side, who Anastasiadis, according to Mavroyiannis, is to be criticized because he sort of left early.
All right.
Without, though, blaming Anastasiadis for the collapse of the negotiations.
Leaving early. I mean, that's the detail.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, we could have pushed, this is what he said, we could have pushed for a bit more. And Averof Neofidou, the president of DC, he's trying to stay outside of this debate, holding the line of Anastasiadis, basically saying that we've tried and this is not our fault. So because he wants DC's support and he has Anastasiadis' endorsement, he can't really differentiate himself from that. He needs to legitimize what happened back then.
So he's standing behind and allowing them.
Yeah, in a sense, Christodoulis is also standing behind. The battle is coming more from Mavroyiannis, who wants to distinguish himself as a technocrat that he was back then from the narrative of the government, and say, I was only an employee of the government. I was a technocrat. My mandate was to negotiate. I didn't have a political authority to move forward by myself, but I did fight for this. This is what he's saying. So that's part of the debate, and obviously the other part is again about corruption. and about all these political issues, the economy, and so on, which is again a paradox because you have Christodoulidis wanting to bring a new sort of state of affairs, but at the same time saying that the government did everything right, So why are you, the question that comes to mind is, what are you doing differently? Because you're promoted as this, young guy, educated guy who wants to bring about change. So what change are you bringing about if everything that took place before is okay?
So he sounds like the continuity
guy. He sounds more like a continuity, yeah. And Averov Neophytou is doing the same sort of thing. He's like, we want to push forward and continue the good work that the government has done, and he's throwing all these ideas, political ideas out about things to do, and one thing's like, so why have you done this 10 years now? Why are you throwing these big ideas about investments, about development projects and all that? You've been in power for so many years, just do it. So, it's a crazy situation because there is no substance to the debate. It's about populism, the whole thing.
So, two leading candidates are.
It's three of them. In the polls, Christodoulidis leads the race, and then you have the latest polls is Mavrogiannis, and the close following Averov. Yeah.
Too close to call situation.
It's
and
very
it's too
close,
early,
like
actually.
a couple of percent, 2%, like that, something like that, 2 or 3. I don't remember exactly. But the difference is very big between Christodoulidis and the second one, and Mavrogiannis, regardless of which scenario it is, either Christodoulidis and Mavrogiannis or Christodoulidis and Averov. The gap is quite big. So it seems that this communication strategy that Christodoulidis is pushing is sort of working in the majority of the people. Yeah.
All right. So at least in terms of negotiations, there will be a continuity.
Well, that's a good question because no one really knows. I mean, Averov is saying yes, we should stay focused on the Guterres framework. Mavrogiannis also thinks sort of the same. Christodoulidis he's more vague. Vigo, who's supporting Christodoulidis, says, we've tried this before, it's not working really, so we need to think about other ways of. But they don't specify what these other ways are. So everyone is sort of vague about what to do with the Cyprus problem. They say we need to push for CBMs like Kassoulidis is doing, but the other side they're saying they're not accepting it. So we're trying, but we're at a deadlock. We don't know what to do.
It's a very unfortunate situation actually for all of us. Obviously, there won't be anything concrete until the elections in Turkey.
Yes, I agree.
So June 2023. But of course, I mean, there's also, you cannot rule out snap elections in Turkey as well.
Oh no, yes, it's possible. It's also possible that he will postpone them. It's another scenario that's going around.
Yeah. Of course, the irony is opposition in Turkey is not, all right, they don't have these, most probably they're not going to have these autocratic tendencies. But when it comes to Cyprus problem, I don't expect them to be following a different course.
I don't think so. I mean, you have a Yi party and you have the Republican Party. I mean, those guys were hardliners before Erdogan was ever a hardliner.
Exactly.
So I'm not expecting that they will change their position much. I'm thinking that they will try to balance things out domestically in terms of the economy. It also depends who the candidate will be, the presidential candidate, because if it's Imamoglu, for example, Imamoglu seems to like the presidential system.
He has the same instincts.
Yes.
They
He's
compare him with.
Maybe we can use it to our benefit. That's the idea. and maybe they will try to sort their relations with the West as well.
Well,
But some of the things that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has been saying are not very, he's been criticizing Israel, very, very badly recently. I mean, Greece, obviously. So you see the whole of the opposition sort of moving farther to the right,
exactly,
closer to Erdogan, because that's where they can find their votes.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, both sides are captured by the nationalists. So, Mr. Erdogan, I mean, it's not his, of course, I mean, he has this instincts of being, autocratic.
Yeah.
We cannot say this is not the case. But he, at least in the past, he had this more pragmatic side.
Well, if you ask me, it was a tactic. That's my take on the situation, because I mean, you can judge that by the results, because I mean, a person who's democratic at heart doesn't become an autocrat,
No. I'm not saying he has this pragmatic side.
Oh, there is a pragmatic side to him. Of course, there is. Yes.
In the sense that he pushed for the Annan plan, for instance.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean not only himself, but at that time, of course, his party was a different creature as well.
Yes.
With Abdullah Gül.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, deep inside, these people are not, liberals, etc. But at least for political expediency, they pushed for reunification of the island, at least for a while. So I would say even until 2017. Of course, whether they were
that's a huge debate, isn't it?
well, they in principle accepted the Guterres framework.
Yeah.
So
the question remains what they were willing to to agree from there on.
Yeah, I mean,
there was some bluffing going on.
Of course. I mean, you cannot say that.
Which you cannot really say.
This was not the case. But what I'm trying to underline is that he has this pragmatic side. I mean,
he has
sometimes flip-flopping, and if there is a deal at the end, he may have this accept these compromises. So when we look at the track record of the opposition in Turkey, we see that they're not as pragmatic. So in that respect,
as flexible maybe. Yeah, but well, they're pragmatic, but they have some. I mean, in terms of Cyprus, I mean, they have this fixation,
exactly.
that the Cyprus problem was resolved in '74. We will not concede on what Ecevit won, the territory that Ecevit got, and all that. Erdogan is more flexible in the sense that he has a different view of the region, and I mean, if you look at how things have changed in the whole region and in Cyprus and within the Turkish Cypriot community, Erdogan has managed to create. Turkey has managed to create a different status quo, generally speaking. Which allows Turkey to be more flexible in terms of what the model of solution is. So, if thinking like Erdogan, if I can control the north, if my control and my influence is so embedded, more than any other time in the past, I don't really mind if the solution is confederal or federal or two states even. I don't mind if you ask me in the future, he might not even mind if it's a unitary state.
Meaning Republic of Cyprus.
Republic of Cyprus, but with a power sharing, let's say like the 60s constitution, for example, provided that he will be able to have some influence within the mechanisms through his own people.
I would say also, and I'm really wondering what you think about that. this is, the optimist insight.
I don't have that one insight, Miss.
Talking, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm really pushing
Sure.
hard to get this optimist out. But what do you think about if we have a broader deal in the Eastern Mediterranean? Nuland was around in May, and she gave some very important messages, like the pipeline thing.
Yeah.
Okay, many people knew it, but that it was not going to take off. But she officially once again buried it, and suggested that maybe it would be better to generate electricity and via interconnectors
to Europe,
transferring it to Europe. I mean, this sounds like a big deal. I mean, which everyone can benefit from, including Israel. I mean, it's
yes.
So, what is your take?
Well, the cables are going ahead, right? The Eurasia interconnector and the Euro-Africa interconnector, they're going ahead apparently, and they're not a big problem because they're cables. They're not pipelines. They don't cost.
They cost less.
They cost, but they don't cause big problems because a pipeline is also about national security. It's about sovereignty issues, maritime rights and so on. But we need to look at Nuland's, and it's not just Nuland, it's also, the American ambassador in Greece and others who have sent these signals, which I read more as their effort to de-escalate tensions in the region and sort of lure Turkey back from Russia to an extent, because it's not just that, it's and also ensure Turkey's stance in the Ukraine war, that it will have an anti-Russia element. So it's like, we're going to bury the East Med so that it doesn't cause problems to you. We're going to also bury it to make room for a different sort of discussion on the matter, because anyway it was more about it was mostly a political narrative in the area. This will open up your prospect in improving your relations with Israel, and also starting a new dialogue with Greece, which happens, by the way. Both of them happened until, at least with Greece, it was overthrown. And then you had all these other things going on. You had the NATO
expansion.
The NATO expansion issue. The Americans basically said, okay, we will push Sweden and Finland to give you what you want. So he got what he wanted, which it was a huge thing. And NATO and Finland, Sweden and Finland were not happy about it. And then you have now this discussion about Turkey should get the F-16s. So you should see this as a broader effort to keep Turkey where it is, keep it in check, and ensure that it will support the Western efforts in Ukraine and beyond that. When it comes to Cyprus, I don't see that as a way of having a breakthrough in Cyprus. But I see it as something that could work within a framework of CBMs. In terms of energy, maybe that includes, electrical energy rather than hydrocarbons, which is much more sensitive. In terms of a broader deal, a regional deal, I see it being very difficult unless the different parties come together and maybe with the help of the EU or the US and have an agreement on maritime zones, which could be a breakthrough that could spill over into other things. And it's possible because now you have this memorandum, this arbitrary sort of ease between Turkey and Libya, and you have the deal between Greece and Egypt, and you have this space between Greece and Cyprus that is not delimited yet. So everyone has a stake in this. So if someone were to come and say, I will facilitate a negotiation, then something could happen. But again, I see Cyprus as being a problem, because every time we negotiated a solution, we also said, let's finish everything else and we let the exclusive economic zone for the end, which in my opinion is a huge mistake.
Maybe we should do it the other way around.
Maybe we should do it the other way around, because it's very sensitive and very important sovereignty issues need to be resolved. If you resolve, for example, the property issue, and you resolve power sharing, and then you say, everything's perfect here, we even resolve security and guarantees, but there is this EZ, then the EZ will come and just everything will crumble, because EZ is so difficult to agree on. Because Turkey is saying, what you have right now as Cyprus, as the Republic of Cyprus, I don't accept it. My exclusive economic zone is, abuts on Egypt's exclusive. So what do we do? So back with the power sharing, back with the property, back with everything else. So we need to resolve this, because it will allow us to create more cooperation in the region. It will have an effect on energy cooperation, and maybe it will create some momentum in terms of resolving other sovereignty issues within the territory, for example, and obviously property. But
it's a long shot.
I'm not hopeful, Sertaç. I'm telling you, geopolitics rules in this region.
I almost. I thought you almost got there so that we could say, well, on this positive note.
I got to the scenario. There is a scenario, it's there. But if I take each country and each dispute differently, I don't see it.
Yeah, what we need is a big regional grand bargain.
Yes. And political will, which is not there.
We haven't discussed that, and not that we are going to discuss, but in Israel too, there will be elections.
That's right.
Netanyahu may make
come back. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. So it's a year of huge changes, and it will be a year of instability, I think, in this.
So maybe we continue this discussion in a year.
In a year, and see what happens. Yeah. It was good to chat with you, though.
Same goes back. And
we'll talk again and see how all this pan out.
Yeah. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.